The question that I think we all want answered, including maybe myself, I'm pretty sure you too, Chris, is what's next? What happens now? The combine is over, the owners' meetings are over, and it's now time to focus our attention to 1 month's time in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I mean it's a that's really the next box to check when it comes to the offseason checklist. You got the Senior Bowl, which unless your team is in the Super Bowl, that's kind of the beginning of the offseason, and then you've got obviously the combine, and then the owners' meetings, and then it's like you got pro days and stuff like that, but really the next item on the list is the NFL draft, and we're now deep enough into free agency in which we've not that any team is really done by now, but they've kind of played their cards on what they want to do, at least what their priorities were, and now it's going to be seeing like how teams are going to attack the draft, and it's really interesting. This is I'm excited for it for sure.
And welcome everybody to the Southside Beat, March 28th, Thursday, 2024. Chris Halicke, Corey Crisan with you. It's all about pro days now. It's all about those top 30 visits. It's all about who are the Steelers and the other 31 teams across the league going to welcome into their respective facilities. And as Jim says, time for the mock drafts to increase. This is prime mock draft season when you're a month out. Now, as it was in like last year, I'm not going to do my full first round mock until 1 week before the draft because things change so quickly and things change so fluidly. One moment you think, oh, the Steelers, there's no way they're in the market for a wide receiver. And then they trade Deontay Johnson. And you think, oh, maybe cornerback in the first round. But then they trade Deontay Johnson for Dante Jackson. And maybe not cornerback in the first round after all. So all of the attention that, was given to just using Senior Bowl as an example with Quinyon Mitchell, the Toledo cornerback, all that attention, I'm not saying it means nothing right now, but what I'm saying is maybe it means a little less as we sit here at the end of March than we did at the end of January and the beginning of February once the Senior Bowl actually happened. So this is how things go. This is how the offseason ebbs and flows. And now that we're through, as Chris said, the thick of free agency in terms of, how many guys get signed in such a finite amount of time and then it kind of dies down. And we're in that period now where it's died down. So now things are going to turn and the attention's going to turn to the draft. And we're going to be looking at who are the Steelers bringing out on the south side. And one that we at least got confirmed yesterday at the Pitt Pro Day was Matt Gonsalves as a local visit. So it's things like that are going to start taking precedent now that we are less than 1 month away from the draft happening.
Yeah, it's now I've got, I've got some inside information, but I'm going to have to save that for the site. I'm going to be putting that together, in the next coming days or whatever. Still recovering from my flight being delayed over 4 hours yesterday. So not only did I not get on an earlier flight, even my original flight was delayed. It was supposed to take off at like 3:50. It was like 8:30 by the time we actually pulled away from the gate. It's almost 5 hours. So I have just based off of things that I heard there, I have a very, very strong feeling that it's going to be tackle in the first round. Again, I'm going to save a lot of the details for why I think, nice barber. But
that's okay. Hey, I'd be pissed too if 4 hours. Are you kidding me? I didn't like sitting in the airport like sitting in the airport for 2 hours when I was, I got there actually early enough to hit my flight out of Omaha. I sat there for 2 hours and I'm like, get me out of here. So I can't imagine thinking, building up that hope and then boom, 4 hours is a long time. So
yeah,
we're glad you're with us today, Chris. We'll take it easy on you today.
And Lori says here, I'm getting heartburn worrying about them getting a center. And like, listen, like the center is high on their. If you look at, and I'm gonna put a list of the pro day visits in the feed here this afternoon, just so that you can go and look. There's not really a lot of smoke screen going on when it comes to what the Steelers are prioritizing in the draft right now.
Right.
It's a lot of linemen. Obviously some other positions too, but you're getting a lot of linemen, even for some of the local visits. Zach Frazier was a local visit because West Virginia counts in that regard. So I center is definitely on their radar for sure. I know for a fact, I've said it before, I know for a fact that they wanted to get a center in free agency, and it just did not happen. For whatever reason, it didn't happen. And it's not because they, I kind of wrote about this, whenever it comes to Omar Khan's, approach to the job. He's looked at it, he's described by a lot of people as aggressive. And I think that's for good reason, but he really downplayed being an aggressive GM more with being just the key to everything is being patient and making sure that you've cast a wide net on a variety of plans. Their initial plan was not to have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields both be in their quarterback room. Their plan was to bring in Russell Wilson once that became a possibility, was to bring in Russell Wilson and have him and Kenny Pickett, be the two guys. Kenny Pickett forced their hand to do something differently. And because they were prepared to have a different plan, they were able to do that and not have to worry about, now we're going to have like possibly a worse quality at quarterback or whatever else. They added another younger quarterback who's got some upside. I would very much argue Justin Fields has a much higher upside than Kenny Pickett, but regardless, they were able to do that because he did his job as GM. If there's a possibility, if there's an avenue he can address or he can explore, then he's going to do that. And so when it comes to center and when it comes to tackle in the draft or just in the offseason in general, like these are things that they're going to have multiple plans for, and you're not going to bat 1,000. No GM does. You're going to have some plans fall through the cracks. It's what are your contingency plans for those things? And I think we're going to see that play out one way or another at center. And if they don't walk away with a center in this draft, that doesn't necessarily have to be like a day one starter, but somebody who can eventually make, early on in their career, make a push to be a starter at the bare minimum, then it's kind of a failure if they don't get that done.
Yeah. And look, I think that if you look back to the Senior Bowl, day one of the Senior Bowl, Mike Tomlin was on top of tackles and centers, was on top of Jackson Powers Johnson, and was on top of guys like Tyler Guyton. And it's not a coincidence. You mentioned that the Steelers really don't hide what their plans are. And all you have to do with that said is look and listen and see at what Mike Tomlin, Omar Khan, and the powers that be do. Sending Isaac Williams to the Senior Bowl to coach offensive linemen is not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Spending as much time as they did around guys like Jackson Powers Johnson and Tyler Guyton and more at the Senior Bowl is not a coincidence. Translating all of that into the combine. Now, to my recollection, Powers Johnson nor Frazier met with the Steelers at the combine, but they met with tackles. They met with the top tackles. They met with top wide receivers. They met with top tackles. And of course, the plan changes over the course of a month between the Senior Bowl and the combine. And the plan might change between the combine and the pro days and the draft. So,
and there are the 30 visits to consider too. So just because they didn't meet with a center, I mean, like I said, they met with Zach Frazier in a local visit, so it didn't even count towards the 30 visits. So, they still can do certain things. Again, I'm not going to give everything away here, but there's I know the reason why they didn't talk to any centers at the draft. And it's just one of the reasons why I can say once, that I can report the details that like it's easy to see why, I'm thinking that tackle is where they go in the first round. There are a few that I think that they really like that probably won't be there. So it's making me think that possibly maybe do they try to trade up and get one of the guys that they really, really like? Maybe. We didn't see that happening with Broderick Jones last year, but it did. Yeah. You never know. And again, this is all about, this is all about seeing what could happen in a variety of possible, and just a variety of possibilities when it comes to the draft. What possibly could be there if they were to trade up 3 or 4 spots to try to get a guy, or okay, if that doesn't happen, what could happen if we trade down 3 or 4 spots and possibly get some extra draft picks, whether it be in the second round or third round or whatever. There's just a number of ways that they have to play this out, and which is why the way that they build their board, which again, Andy Weidl's in charge of building the board, how they build their board, how they prioritize positions. But the work that's being done right now, a lot of that work is going into tackle, and so that's making me think that is the number one priority for them in the draft, and it's understandable. I think it's a lot easier to find a center than it is to find a tackle. So I understand why that position might be a little bit more important to them, even though center is a bigger need right now. Again, the draft should not be the medium in which you address needs. That's how you lose drafts. You have to draft based off of primarily best player available, not, we need a center, so no matter what, at 20, we're taking a center. No, you cannot operate that way.
Now, that being said, it's mentioned here about Nate Herbig, right? John brings up Nate Herbig, says we need Nate Herbig to step up big time. Let me weigh it this way, too. The Steelers right now, in all likelihood, are considering what's a better fit on this offensive line. Is it, let's use the names Amarius Mims, Jackson Powers-Johnson, Zach Frazier, and then tackle B, for just as a hypothetical, as an example, okay? Is an offensive line of Amarius Mims plus Zach Frazier or Amarius Mims plus Nate Herbig better than an offensive line of Jackson Powers-Johnson plus Dan Moore? Or Jackson Powers-Johnson plus whatever other tackle? Like, they're weighing this out, and they're weighing the value, and they're obviously seeing what other teams are looking at center, what other teams. That's why I mentioned a couple months ago, when you look at the scope of Jackson Powers-Johnson, who's picking in front of the Steelers? It's the Rams. At the time, before free agency, they needed a center. They addressed that need in free agency. The Dolphins needed a center. They picked right behind the Steelers. And you would think that if the Dolphins had any intel or any idea that the Steelers were going to get a guy like Jackson Powers-Johnson at 20, maybe that would prompt Miami to trade up, or maybe that would prompt Miami to get in a bidding war, perhaps with the Steelers on a pick to trade up with. And you got to keep in mind, too, at 51, if Zach Frazier is available anywhere near that, and they prioritize Zach Frazier over Powers-Johnson for whatever reason, they might trade up, or they might feel out the teams that are in front of them, picks, let's say 41 to 50. Who's in front of them that could take Zach Frazier, or who could jump ahead of them to take Zach Frazier? All of that needs to be considered. I wanted to bring this up because you talk about tackle, and I agreed with this. I think tackle was going to be the priority in this draft all along, and that traces back to the Senior Bowl. They have a track record of going to the pro day of the player they take in the first round. This is a trend for them. They have a habit of doing this. They sent the cavalry to Georgia's pro day. Amarius Mims, Cedric Van Pran, Bullard, the safety. Many other guys, obviously. But when Amarius Mims is a name that is projected, that is mocked, that is being talked about as an option at 20 or even sooner, when you look at the size, when you look at the performance at the combine, when you look at what he all likely did on pro day, like, it's not a coincidence on why the Steelers are doing this. And as you mentioned, and as it's shown in history and in years past, they telegraph what they do. If they send a bunch of people to Georgia's pro day to watch a top tackle, they're seriously looking at that tackle. There's no wasted motion when it comes to all of this. And that's why Matt Consalvis, when you look at local visits, and Zach Frazier, when you look at local visits, are going to visit the Steelers for the pre-draft because they're vetting the two positions. Now, Consalvis as a third round, or let's say it's a 3rd to 6th round pick, somewhere in that regard, he's probably more likely a day 3, like a 4th round pick. But if that's an option, even if they take Mims or Fuaga or any of these other guys in the 1st round, they're going to want to build that depth in some ways. So that's why they're doing this. There's reasons for all of this stuff.
Yeah. Again, they have this, and in talking with Omar, this week in Orlando, it was very apparent that, whenever he put it the way that he did, a lot of the things that just made sense. Whenever you kind of, whenever he said what he said about, that patience is the key to a lot of this stuff. Not overreacting, not trying to get the cart out in front of the horse when it comes to certain things. Of course, then there are certain moves that they make where it's kind of like, well, you are a little aggressive when it comes to, for example, the kickoff rule gets changed, and then literally the very next day you sign Cordarrelle Patterson. So, but when you go back and you look at like certain things, there are multiple ways to improve a team. I go back and look to the last offseason when they signed Isaac Seumalo. Guard wasn't thought to be like this major need. It definitely was not a major need. It was, and they had way more pressing needs, but when the opportunity presented itself, they weren't going to say no. When they we didn't think that we could sign him for the contract that we got for him. And, that's a big thing. Rico says, gives a $20 contribution. Appreciate it, Rico. He says, like the signing of Patterson can be a versatile option on offense and, of course, special teams, but obviously they don't have a wide receiver too. If they go tackle first, do they go wide receiver second, center third, or vice versa? Well, first off, just to touch on Patterson, I really do not think that Patterson is anything more than kick returner. I'll put it this way. He is Godwin. No, I can't say.
Igwebuike. Yeah.
Thank you. He's his replacement, but obviously with way more upside.
Right.
I understand Patterson's 33 years old, and I get it. Like, he's not the same guy that we saw 5-6 years ago. But what I am saying is, I really believe that they're bringing him to primarily be a kick returner. And then, a running back 3. I saw some people, trying to come up with some things that, maybe they're going to do something with Jalen or Najee, since Najee's getting near the end. Like, no, dude, Jalen and Najee are their number 1 and number 2. And it's Najee, then Jalen, but those are the top 2 guys. Patterson is a 3. And I would even say he's a distant 3.
Sure.
I don't think that Patterson is going to be a big part, or even, I would say, any kind of significant part of the offense. I think anything that he is included in, it will be will be sprinkled in more than anything. It will not be anything that really. It was kind of like the obsession with Anthony McFarland last year, that there was a lot of fans who were just fascinated about how the Steelers were going to use him. It was like he didn't even end up being on the team. It just I think it's kind of the same thing with Patterson. He's going to primarily be there to take advantage of the kickoff rule, and then he can help you as a third running back, maybe even in a pinch, be able to play a little bit of receiver in a pinch. But it's primarily as a returner. And then obviously when it comes to how the draft goes, if they do go tackle in the first round, again, there's a number of different options, ways you can go. There are certain trades you can make to either trade up if you like, you're dead set on it. The one thing I will say is that receivers are a really deep position. So I think even in the third round, you can find a guy who's going to possibly make a push to be like a borderline number 2 guy, like really, really could, just because it is such a deep class of receivers.
Mm-hmm. William said they showed up today. Yeah. Chris was painstakingly in an airport yesterday, and I was on the south side, but for Pitt Pro Day, I was in college football mode yesterday. By the way, with Cordarrelle Patterson, I don't want to lose the sight that he had his best years offensively as a weapon with Arthur Smith as the head coach of the Falcons.
Yeah.
2021, 2022, he put up some relatively decent numbers. And in 2021, between rushing and receiving, 11 total touchdowns. Pretty good in 50 receptions. Like, I'm not saying he's going to do that again with Pittsburgh, but I mean, you could theoretically, you could put Najee Harris, Jalen Warren, and Cordell Patterson on the field at the same time and make that work in some way. Now, again, Arthur Smith would have a plan and a way to use Patterson, but I'm not going to say he's going to be a Pro Bowl player, but he's going to be utilized somewhat, at least in the offense, you have to think.
Let's just get this out of the way. Billy brings up if Justin can catch them all for him running routes, Justin Fields will not be slash 2.0. It's just not happening. No. It's not happening. So just sorry to disappoint, but just get it out of your heads. He's not the 2020 version of Cordell Stewart, when as a rookie. Nothing happening there.
Jim says, hope they don't grab a wide receiver until at least the third round. O-line needs to be addressed. The thing about that, Jim, is so does wide receiver now. Wide receiver is a need now going into this draft because they traded Deontay Johnson. They gave that right up. They said, we're going to roll with George Pickens, but they have to get a wide receiver early unless they sign somebody crazy in free agency, which all the wide receiver markets really died down in free agency. They're going to have to go get a top end receiver in this draft, whether that is first round pick or not. And if, I said this last week, 2 weeks ago, if at this point, if they drafted, whether it's Thomas or Mitchell or any of these other really top end receivers that aren't Marvin Harrison Jr., because they're not going to move up that far for him. That's insane. If they get one of these first round receivers that they could put next to George Pickens right away, I wouldn't bat an eye on it at all.
Yeah. Steeler League again. I will just shoot down anything. Do you see them using Fields how the Ravens use Lamar with Flacco as a starter? No. Justin Fields is going. It will. They don't have these. No,
they're grooming him to be the next starting quarterback in this franchise.
Like, if he possibly, they brought Justin Fields in to be competition for Russell Wilson, to push Russell Wilson to be the best version of himself that he can be at 35 years old. And then if Russell Wilson fails and Justin Fields gets his shot and he succeeds, Steelers just found themselves a young quarterback with a really high ceiling. So no, don't think of anything. Don't think of Justin Fields in any way other than a backup quarterback right now with a lot of upside.
Yeah.
Think about him the best way I can probably put it is think about him as Jordan Love. He's okay. Jordan Love. That's what he is. I would even not be surprised if before season's end or after the season that he gets some sort of extension similar to the way that the Packers extended Jordan Love. That is the best way I could possibly put it when it comes to Justin Fields.
JLA says don't draft on need. That's the reason they drafted Kenny. I think quarterback is the exception with the concept of drafting on need. If you need a quarterback, more often than not, going into the draft and scouting and doing a lot of scouting on quarterbacks is a route that teams should explore when it comes to need. Not every team's going to be able to sign a Kirk Cousins out of free agency. Somebody that can lift a team in the way that he can. Like, yeah, the Steelers made a trade for Justin Fields and signed Russell Wilson, but like they weren't going to go scout quarterbacks anyway because Kenny Pickett was also on the table as an option. So they weren't going to do that anyway.
I kept whenever I saw yesterday the report about Dak and how he could possibly be entertaining free agency next offseason, I cannot help but think of the possibility of Dak Prescott being the quarterback for the Steelers and literally before every single snap, literally saying the team's catchphrase.
Here we go.
As his cadence snap the football. Here we go. Like, it's just so funny. It's almost like it's written in the stars. But no, like all seriousness though. I do disagree a little bit there. I don't think that you have to go in and be like, we need a quarterback. And so no matter what in the first round, we're taking this guy just because he's a quarterback. Because if you swing and miss, if that's not a first round quarterback, you've just wasted a first round pick. And you could really, really make the argument that that's what happened with Kenny Pickett, that he wasn't a first round caliber quarterback. He might have been the best in his class, and still could be the best. I understand Brock Purdy's more accomplished because he's played in a freaking Super Bowl. Now he's also playing on a team that's the best roster in football. But beside the point, Kenny Pickett, even though he was the best or one of the best in his class, it was a really, really terrible class. We've hit on that multiple times. That was a really bad class of quarterbacks. And 2 years into his career, the Steelers were willing to trade him. Or at least they put Kenny in a position where Kenny was like, I need you to trade me. I want a change of scenery. Like, you wouldn't even be entertaining certain options to put your first round quarterback in that position if you gave any kind of proof that he was definitely going to be the guy. And so I do disagree a little bit there. And that's, again, which is why I just think that, the draft needs to, I understand you have certain positions that probably would be stupid to pick. Like if they get to 20 this year, and for whatever reason, the best player, like undoubtedly on the board, is a running back, that makes zero sense to take a running back. So it gets to a certain point where, yes, position is taken into account there. But when the Steelers have need at center, at tackle, at receiver, at cornerback, at defensive line, they've got a number of different positions in which they can narrow down the list of positions and be like, let's choose from the very best of these positions. And that's the way you're supposed to draft.
And look, we've talked about the poor planning around Ben Roethlisberger's exit, right? Like, that's a big part of this. Having a bad exit plan for Ben and not being able to time that out effectively, and not being able to do one of two things: either suck enough to go get a top 5 pick in the draft and draft the next Terry Bradshaw. I mean, that's the last time the Steelers had a top 5 pick, I believe, was Terry Bradshaw. So either suck bad enough to get a Terry Bradshaw, or pony up the big bucks in free agency to get a Kirk Cousins.
Here we go.
Or Dak, I guess. But that's my point is,
can't help it, dude.
The poor planning pigeonholed the Steelers into this 2022 draft class, where, looking back on it, is one of the worst, if not the worst, draft class for quarterbacks in recent history, and maybe even all of NFL history. I mean, it's really bad. So, with that said, all of that poor planning forces the Steelers into the quarterback market in 2022, where the draft pool is not that deep. And I'd have to go back and look at the list of free agents, but they were not in position, or they just were not going to pony up the big money for the quarterback. So it's all about timing when it comes to that too. And look at all these teams that are drafting at the top of this draft, right? Quarterbacks could be the first 4 picks off the board. I wouldn't bat an eye, pending a team trades up, like Minnesota or something like that. Think about Chicago, think about New England, think about Washington, think about Minnesota. If Minnesota moved into the top 4, the first 4 picks off the board could be quarterbacks between Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jane Daniels, and JJ McCarthy. So, and I'm not saying those are all worth the slotting. That's the importance of the position. The Vikings, when Kirk Cousins chose to sign in Atlanta, became players in the quarterback market. And the guy that they just lost was the number 1 quarterback on the free agent market. So anything that they would have gone and done in free agency as far as paying that money up goes would have been a downgrade anyway. So why not go for the upside play when it comes to one of these rookies that are coming in? The Steelers didn't have that luxury. They were pigeonholed into that. And now the Vikings, but they have some more capital, the Vikings are pigeonholed into making a move for a quarterback now, or dealing with a retread or a veteran or a stopgap and being terrible next year and going into the class next year or the year after, whatever it is. So that's what the quarterback position influence is when it comes to not just best player available philosophy, but position of need philosophy as well. That's my stance on that.
I mean, Lori makes a good point here. She said, which makes you wonder why they didn't just give Mason a chance. Like if Mason Rudolph was a 3rd round pick. 3rd round picks are not, you don't throw those away,
No.
willy-nilly. And so, why he wasn't really given a chance, that was hold on a second. Aaron said Mason was horrible last year. Why would they give him another chance? Are you talking about like the year before or the year after? Because last year, no, Mason was not terrible.
He was not horrible.
No, I would very, very much strongly say that Mason was a gigantic reason that they even made the playoffs last year. Okay, there we go. Aaron said, "Sorry, I meant Cole." Yeah, all this quarterback talk. I'm thinking
we
Mason.
have to specify those. We have to specify those, guys. I was going to say, wait a second. Oh man,
no. That's funny. Woo. No, and listen, it just makes you wonder why when 2021 came to a close, and like, okay, you want to sign a Mitch Trubisky, to an affordable contract. Okay. That's fine. But it could have been Mitch and Mason, and it could have been those two battling it out. And then you could have used that first round pick on, I don't know, just about anything else, best player available to try to improve maybe the offensive line, maybe the defensive line. I'd have to go back and see what the major needs were back then. I understand that was just 2 years ago, but I've slept since then. I've been on delayed flights since then. But
why we're running out of time here today.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I do know for a fact that the offensive line was needing to be upgraded. Then you could use a 20th overall pick on a tackle or on whatever. And that wasn't done. They wanted to go with Kenny, and you kind of live and learn, because now Kenny's going to be on this just another one of these first round picks that's kind of been that's just at least for the Steelers' sake, been a bust. I'm not saying he can't go on and go do something else where he becomes a quality quarterback in this league, but for the Steelers, he was a bust. Now you can put some of Kenny's stuff on Matt Canada. I do think that does play a role in there. Surely. I think, having him as your offensive coordinator made the entire offense worse, but as I've stated multiple times, there were a lot of factors that went into it, and Matt Canada was not the only reason why Kenny Pickett did not make a jump from year one to year two. So I to kind of close it up, I would just say, going into this draft, I think the Steelers need to be, and will be, not just my own personal opinion, but based off of things that I heard, they will be going into this draft with offensive line as a priority, maybe even as the priority, with tackle probably at the top of that list. And it's a good thing for it, because listen, if Russell Wilson and Justin Fields are going to be your quarterbacks, you're going to have to give them time to throw. Both of those guys like to hold on to the football. Right now, you've got a really promising tackle and Broderick Jones, who probably should be playing on the left side. And then if you can get yourself a really good right tackle with that 20th overall pick, then you've got your bookends on the offensive line. That's what I would do. Is center still a gigantic need? Yes. And maybe you figure out a way to trade up in the second round to try to get Zach Frazier. Or you trade up when necessary to get Zach Frazier, because I don't think he's there at 51. And I do have a very strong inkling that the Steelers like Zach Frazier, maybe even more than Jackson Powers Johnson, maybe even more. But it's not because of talent; it might be because of some other things.
I think it's because of fit, but
I think it's because of health.
That's also true. That's a discussion for another day, though. By the way, Trent McDuffie was the pick taken right after Kenny, and then Tyler Linderbaum was taken 5 picks after. So there's your recap on the 2022 NFL draft. We're gonna get out of here. No DK or Ramon today. It is opening day in the baseball world.
Happy opening day, everybody, to all who celebrate.
Happy opening day to everybody except Rob Manfred, because it's a damn shame that there's no 1:00 baseball on opening freaking what is known as opening day. This Korea series, the overseas stuff. Don't like it. I don't mind baseball played in Korea at all.
Yeah.
But leave opening day to what it should be. Okay. It should be celebrated as a holiday. There should be baseball on at 12:15 Eastern, 12:30 Eastern in Cincinnati, Ohio. Open the season every year, traditionally in Cincinnati, Ohio. That's how baseball should go. And then there should be, I don't know, 5-6 games on as we speak that are wrapping up. That should have started at 1 Eastern that didn't. The majority of the schedule playing at 4 o'clock makes no sense. There's a ton of series on the West Coast. Baseball on opening day deserves to be played outside at 1 o'clock Eastern under the sun, and it deserves to start in Cincinnati, Ohio. End rant. Happy opening day to everybody, except for Rob Manfred. I mean, my favorite memories are getting out of school or skipping school to go to opening day.
Yeah.
Rob Manfred takes that away. Yeah, I know the early games got rained out, Mark, but there should have been more than 2 of them. There should have been more than 2 of them.
I do agree that there should have been more than 2 of them.
And the fact that teams are entering today with a win-loss record at all is mind-blowing to me. It's not the way it should go.
Well, I mean, for those on the show, and I would assume that those tuning in who are Steelers fans, probably a good portion of those Steelers fans are also Pirates fans, and the Pirates are actually playing. I think first pitch is in about a half hour.
Eastern, it should be.
Yeah, it's in about a half an hour. So, yeah, like they're playing in Miami. It's on the East Coast. Why was first pitch at 4:10, not 1:10?
Because Rob Manfred's not good at his job. That's why. Easy answer. Because Rob Manfred's not good at his job.
After covering the Major League Baseball lockout, I can tell you right now, just oh man, if I can only say all the things that I heard from the player side on how they feel about Rob Manfred.
Yeah,
I cannot.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I think it's pretty obvious. No DK and Ramon today. DK will be covering that Pirates series in Miami.
Yep, he's in Miami.
That starts at 4:10 and not 1:10. So no DK Ramon today. I think DK will be back Monday. Or no, he'll be back tomorrow. Excuse me. Tomorrow. DK Ramon tomorrow. So there you go.
I think it's a typical night game for Pirates tomorrow. So I think DK has time to do the show before he has got to go to the Lone Depot Park.
Not Home Depot, Lone Depot. Remember when the day after opening day was an off day too? Good times. Good times, Rob Manfred.
Not for every team. I think that's true. I think that's typically more for the teams that are first off in cold weather cities or poor weather cities. Just in case there's
poor weather, yeah.
That's probably a better way to put it. Cities that get a lot of rain or cities that get a lot of rain snow. And it could be cold, snow even this time of year. But I think that extra day is built in for that reason. But you're not going to see the Rangers and the Astros get a lot of those because, or the Diamondbacks or any team that has like a closed roof, where they could just close the roof. All right, no big deal. We're still playing baseball. So,
did you see Arizona play their last spring training game in their home stadium and they had a rain delay because they left the roof open? Did you see that? Dead serious. That happened. Yeah, they left the roof open.
First off, the fact that it rained in Arizona is one thing. The second thing is that they left their roof open, and so okay, that's funny.
And they can't close the roof with people inside; it's a safety hazard. So, they had to deal with that.
I thought that was like in the rules that like once the roof is either open or closed, you can't open or close it.
That also sounds right too.
I think that's like it's like once the game starts, it's like you're not. Because I know, like, for a fact that at least when it comes to the Rangers ballpark, like, that thing opened and closed all the time with fans in it. So
maybe it's just
now Chase Field could be a completely different thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's enough. That was our final thing today. Some complaining about baseball on opening day.
I'll complain. I love baseball. It's I love baseball. It's my favorite sport. Truthfully is. But don't love Rob Manfred, and I'll leave it at that. All right, no DK, no run today. They'll be back tomorrow. So will we. On Friday, on this Thursday, though, he's Chris Halicke. I'm Corey Crisan, and this has been the Southside Beat. We will talk to you tomorrow. Cheers. Enjoy baseball coming up in about, 30 minutes or so? Enjoy that. Cheers, everybody.